working with, natural resource management issues. So, for example, people who are involved in forest rights um, act, or people who are working on biodiversity. So these people are trying to, to develop community of people who believe in, different ways of doing things. But otherwise, at large, if we look at the civil society in general, people are divided, and people are divided in two extremes. One, who are confrontative in their own ways, and others, who don't even want to think; they just want to get budgets and deliver, products and services, and submit utilization statements at the end of the day. Uh, so we have, those two extremes, and we need to create civil society organizations, or we need to realign existing civil society organizations to think little differently. Even, and what I'm saying is, I will only hint this. I won't comment on it, but you can relate what I'm saying with what's going on in the country today, right? In terms of agriculture, in terms of other natural resources, in terms of, development at large. You would see the civil society on this side and that side, but there are hardly any people. There are some people, but there are not many, who are trying to practice the more integrated, holistic approaches. So that's the third challenge, or the fourth challenge. And the fifth challenge, of course, is, the more integrated policies. And I'm sure many of you are expert in this area, or would have something to share and contribute. But we need to develop policies, which are, you know, in synergy with each other, and could be implemented on a regional scale. So we have to develop policies, integrated policies for pockets. I mean, by pocket, I mean ecosystems, right? The ecosystem units. And a lot of work needs to be done there. A lot of people are trying to do it, particularly the water resource management people. They have done good job in this sector, or the agricultural people. They are, gradually getting better. So people in agriculture, people in water resource management, people in groundwater management, for that matter, they are doing good work in terms of making policies more integrated, more systemic, and policies that can be implemented at the regional scale. So, but we have to expand that kind of thinking in many more areas, in many more sectors. So these are the five challenges. To summarize what I just said, the first challenge is the dominant discourse of the status quo, and particularly the aspirational part of the status quo. Not as much the policies and practices, but the aspirational part of the discourse, the status quo. Second is, the embracing more systemic thinking, holistic thinking. Third was the lack of leadership at the grassroots, or the leadership development at the grassroots. Fourth is having a civil society, alternative civil society. Right? I don't know whether this is a good term, but as people are valuing alternative media, maybe we need an alternative civil society today, which believes in a different kind of thinking rather than being on either extremes, without devaluing, importance of those roles. So it's not that we don't need people who can perform that kind of role in the society. That's still needed. But we also need people who can, align them, position themselves in between, or, somewhere midway this continuum, and, experiment something different. And the fifth thing is, of course, the integrated policies. So these are the five challenges to, implement the alternative perspective. Now, why is it challenging for the STEM professionals? And there was a reason why I wanted to, focus on that part. I hope I'm in time, so I have 8 more minutes. So, why focus on STEM professionals? So you know the answer already. Uh, we are getting younger and younger as a country, as a society. So the population or share of younger population in our total population is increasing. Right. Most of these people are unemployed, or they are underemployed. Right. And so another challenge is, how to engage them, and engage them where. Right. So what could be more meaningful way to engage this increasingly younger population? So A, population is expanding, or that portion of population is expanding. B, we need to engage them somewhere. right? And we need to engage them in a meaningful manner. And maybe, because of these two reasons, and of course, as a society, we have a lot of developmental challenges. It's a, humongous task, and to deliver this, we need resources. So as we needed resources to build industry 50 years ago, 60 years ago, we needed resources to build infrastructure, that many years ago. Similarly, we need the resources to build society today. And around 1950s, after the freedom movement, or around 1980s, after JP's movement, a lot of people came and entered into development space and worked, in a very meaningful manner in their own ways. But now the new generation is not so much informed about all of that, and is not so much inclined towards it also. And that's why around, towards the beginning of this century, some thinkers in India had, started talking about it, thinking about it, and then came several programs for sensitizing youth systematically to let them enter into development sector. And of course, there are professional institutions, like where we all work, which are grooming new talent, younger generation, making them professionally more capable to enter into this field. But apart from that, there were efforts from civil society organizations and people working in alternative education field. So they come up with very interesting models, particularly the fellowship model. And a lot of younger people have now entered into this field. The challenge for them are not new. Again, some of the things are very common. The first thing that we talked about, that is the status quo, or the second thing, that is the interdisciplinarity or the systems thinking. So the question we should ask ourselves is, do they really get an interdisciplinary training, right? So that they are capable of thinking more holistically, and they're free. They're free of their own disciplinary egos, and they're free of their own disciplinary determinations. So that is very essential. So when I went to IIT, that was an interdisciplinary center, and one of our teachers would ask us, what did you unlearn today? Because as an engineer, as a manager, as a scientist, you have some kind of scientist, you are trained in a particular manner. So have you unlearned something today? So what are our students unlearning when they come to us, is the question that I think we should ask ourselves. Are they unlearning something than, what I have learned from my disciplinary training, or what I have learned from my disciplinary practice? Am I creating a space for them to think more freely and even challenge, what our generation has learned from our own disciplinary practice and disciplinary learnings? Are we encouraging them to do it? If not, then they will confine their thinking and therefore their work in those very disciplinary boundaries. And I don't know, but they may even carry their disciplinary egos, and people will continue to be proud of someone, right? So that is one thing, which younger generations, when they entered into specializations, now specializations are getting more and more interdisciplinary. But are they getting more interdisciplinary in terms of thinking, and are they creating spaces for them to think more freely? Are the two questions, rather more than questions, I would say those are the two agendas we will have to work upon over next 20 years. And then the discourse will start changing. But otherwise, we'll continue confining ourselves, as well as we'll train our students to confine, in those very limits. So that is the one challenge for them. And challenge for them particularly is that they don't even realize it, when they enter the school, or when they spend their initial 3 years, 4 years time in the school. They're so new to it. They only start realizing it when they get into practice. So a lot of teachers today, and even my teachers, they tell in informal conversations that when students go to field for their field stays, for their immersion studies, for their field work, for their dissertation work, and when they come back, they challenge us. They start challenging us, which is very natural, I feel. I don't know whether you agree with me or not. We may be on a different page, but yeah, this is what I feel. My opinion, take it or leave it, but has been my impression and observations also. So I think the point is we need to create that free space for them to challenge disciplinary boundaries. Otherwise, we won't be able to create the holistic understanding. And how to do that is the question. Third is, bringing in more people-centric, qualitative, participatory approach in their research, in their learning, in their work. And unfortunately, I mean, besides a few exceptions, schools like TISS or IIT, some of the IIT schools, or IRMA kind of management institutions. Besides a few institutions in India, which I'm aware of, and of course you could add to that list. We are not really training our students to go to the field, or go to people, live with them, love them, learn from them. Some social work institutions use these phrases and the poem, Lao Tzu's poem, as their principle. The poem is overused, but are we really training them to do it, to practice it, and how? How are we doing it? So my question is, how many of our graduates spend 1 or 2 years of their life after graduation in a village, or in a slum community? Do they prefer to stay there for one complete year? Because that's very essential for them to immerse in the realities and start working on it. I'm not saying that they're not working in that field. They are. They would join some civil society organization, they will join some philanthropic organization, they will join a government program, they will get a good professional position, with handsome salary, and they will contribute. I'm not saying that they're not contributing, but are they spending enough time to understand reality first? Or are they going with their university trainings and participating in this organization and trying to do what these organizations are already doing? So I'm from one group which has spent initial 2-3 years of time living in tribal rural villages and learning from the community. So I think it is very essential for the younger generations to practice go to the people approach. And by go to the people approach, I mean the entire poem written by Lao Tzu. Go to the people, live with them, learn from them, love them, start with what they have, built on what they know. And at the end, they should feel that we have done it ourselves, not by someone else. So to cultivating leadership at that level, that sort of professionalism is really needed, and they should be doing it. I also see people are not really trained. I mean, they receive 4 days of PRA training at max. They get to practice PRA once or twice during their trainings. So total amount of time spent on PRA is 12 or 15 days during their training, entire training. I don't know what happens next when they go to the organization. Not many organizations encourage participatory approaches today, or they have their own interpretations of participatory approaches. But the participatory approach itself has evolved so much beyond PRA, right? Particularly in digital era. We have modern technologies. We could use those technologies in a participatory manner. We could embrace approaches like action learning, participatory action learning. So there's a whole lot of world which can give better skills, better perspectives, approaches to engage with people in a more meaningful manner, without really creating dogma of participation or being romantic about it. A few years ago, when I started traveling to Chandrapur and working in some of the villages there, I observed that some of my mentees would go and talk to them about PRAs, and with the kind of classroom trainings they receive. The people generally go to the villages and start talking to people like we would like to draw a map on floor, right, using local materials and all of that. And people would say, oh, you want to draw a resource map, give me a pen and paper and I can draw it for you, right? So it's not true for all the villages or for everyone in the village, but many people are now well aware of some of these tools, because the tools have been used since last at least 25-30 years. So we need to explore better tools, or use them in a more innovative manner. So I think that training in being more participatory, being more inclusive, and being more action oriented in our learnings is very essential. And I'm sure it is there in the syllabus. I'm not saying that it's not in the syllabus. It's there in the syllabus. So how do our students perceive it and use it is something that we need to look at. Fourth challenge, the younger people will have in development sector is the power, particularly the intergenerational disparity in thinking, or approaches to developmental work. And how to build that intergenerational synergy, when a fresh graduate from Mumbai University School or TISS, IRMA, XLRI, IIT, IIM, many other prestigious institutes around the country, when they receive good training and when they will receive better training and enter into a development organization, they will definitely create some disruption there. And the leadership of that organization would not be very happy with that disruption because they have to manage their business, they have to manage their show, and anyone coming and challenging everything from the bottom will not be accepted. So we'll have to train our students on how to approach the change, or even the change management. The management professionals certainly have some training on management, managing change, but managing change in a non-profit context or managing change in a social context is something that we'll have to talk to about with our students. How to handle leadership, how to handle management, how to work with them to create shared value, to create shared vision, to get your ideas accepted, to get yourself accepted for the first, and then start talking about it. Otherwise, with new ideas, with bright ideas, and with the blood of 20s, a lot of people challenge and create disruptions in the organizations, and they lose respect for themselves. Then people keep shifting their jobs every year and a half, 2 years, and spend almost 10 years, 5 to 10 years to be mature enough to know how organizations work and how to deal with them and how to get our point across. So that is one challenge for the new generation, that they will have to get accepted first and learn to communicate their point and then create value for both. A lot of people are doing it, but there's a need for more training, grooming, and mentoring, and we need that support system, ecosystem. And that's the fifth point. These students, just the academic training or having some qualification for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years time is not enough. They will need mentoring support, they'll need monetary support, and they will also need moral support, because entering into this field, sacrificing 2/3 of your income which you would have otherwise had, is not easy. It's not easy to convince to the family. It's not easy to convince to your counterparts, to your partners, right? I mean, a lot of people, our generation felt this, and I know many of you could relate with that. After entering into development field, a lot of people was not able to get married. They were not able to find partners. So we had to, in one of the programs I participate, one of the youth network we participate, we had to encourage intra-group marriages. We had to encourage people to start considering each other as prospective partners, right? Otherwise it's difficult to survive and sustain in this ecosystem. You will have to sustain yourself first. So at least the income, 2/3 income that you compromise at the beginning of your career, that compromise at least come down to 1/3 of a net compromise. I'm not talking about individual compromise, but so in some ways, so people need very different kind of supports. And as teachers, you know it much better than me, because you deal with so many students on a day-to-day basis. You know their problems well. So that's the fifth challenge. To summarize again, yes, of course, even the younger generation and students will have to face the challenge of status quo. They will have to face the challenge of lack of interdisciplinarity, or unlearning their professional biases, and embracing more systemic, more holistic approach, which is needed, to implement this whole community development perspective. Third is being more participatory and having better training on participatory methods, techniques, tools, and really practicing it, at least in the early stage of their career, so that they can continue with it. The fourth is learning to deal with power. Power particularly within the organizational context, and later on, of course, with other stakeholders. But if you receive initial training well and learn to know how to work within the organizational setup, they will learn how to deal with then larger forces later on. But learning power and learning to deal with power is again very important thing. And fifth is the support, both monetary, mentoring, and moral support. So these are the 5 things needed to enable this approach. But it's a very good strategy to invest in the younger generation, so that they can embrace a new change and broader thinking, and may try experimenting some regional level community development approaches in their lifespan, so that we may have more demonstrations over next 20, 40, 60 years of time. And so our prime minister has already committed to get to net zero by 2070. We have enough time, 50 years of time, which is 2 generations time. And I think we are at the right place, right time to cultivate new seeds of thoughts, to cultivate new models of development, and also enable our professionals in that manner, in a manner that let them realize this kind of development. So this was my thoughts. Uh, I hope I was structured and concise enough and clear enough also.